Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast with your host, Glenn Schmeltzley. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. And whether it's your first time or the 177th time that you're joining, I'm glad you're here. Today's talk is with a technology vendor. As a disclaimer, please note there's no sponsor or affiliate relationship here. They're just simply on the show to give their perspective on our topic. So let's get straight into today's show. In it, we're going to talk about leveling up beyond KPIs to data that visualizes our full funnel. Comedian George Carlin knew how complicated things get with marketing technology. Or you can imagine that when you hear him talk about stuff. Here's how he put it in his legendary sketch. In life, all you really need is a space for your stuff. Houses serve that purpose. They're a covered heap of stuff. And when you fly on an airplane for a Hawaiian vacation, you carry a smaller version of your house with you. When you get to the hotel room in Honolulu, you open up your suitcase and you put away all your stuff. And you start feeling okay because you have some of your stuff with you. And that's when your friend calls up and asks you to come over and spend the weekend at his place at Maui, prompting you to pack even smaller versions of your stuff. So you get over to Maui. Now you've got stuff all the way back on the mainland. You've got stuff on another island, and now you've got stuff on this island, and you're there. But then you learn that you and your friend are both going over to the other side of the island overnight, and that forces you to pack an even smaller version of your stuff. And the cycle continues on and on. I think this is the feeling we can get watching our marketing technology stuff evolve before our eyes. As our software tools grow, so does the complexity. We're beyond the point of logging into each of them to see individual KPIs. They've just become too specialized. And now we need meta tools. Things crafted solely to connect with those specialized marketing systems to extract and roll up streamlined data so that we can analyze or see our whole funnel dashboarded. And it's against this backdrop that I invited today's guest. He hails from India, having graduated with a BA from the University of Mumbai, and since moving to Canada in the 1990s, he's focused on building marketing machines and crafting go-to-market strategies that yield repeatable, predictable, and scalable revenue. Following experiences as a senior executive at numerous B2B sales outfits, he has now become the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer at Agency Analytics. His passion for augmenting marketing and sales through data and automation comes through loud and clear in the insights he shares on his blog. So please join me in talking with Jacob Varghese. Jacob Varghese, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Glenn. It's a pleasure to be able to be on the show after a long time of being connected to each other. So it's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm looking forward to our conversation, which is going to get into some of the work behind the scenes of how we know how our marketing activities are doing. Can you just set the stage for me? Tell me what your involvement is these days with helping people get their analytic information.
Right. So I'm currently the CMO of Agency Analytics. So what we do is, let me ask you, have you ever dreaded the reporting cycle and struggling with manual reports, pulling data from thousands of places? Well, we found a way to solve that. So Agency Analytics saves marketing agencies time and improves client retention through automated and stress-free client reporting. So that's what we do. And basically, our agency customers use enhanced reporting capabilities with Agency Analytics to prove marketing ROI, improve client retention, and also to facilitate upsell opportunities often. So it's an important part. We find that they tell us that it's an important client reporting for them is a valuable opportunity to retain customers and improve growth.
Right. So, yeah, this is stepping over into that old line, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there are things that you may not even realize you're missing if you don't have the metrics. Let's step back though. When it comes to people who are doing analytics, most people, if it's not, for most people, it's not their entire job. And furthermore, for most people, it's simply a function that is contained inside of one of their systems. So let's say they want to know how things are going on their website, they go to usually Google Analytics. Or if they want to know how things are going for their email campaigns, they log into their marketing automation suite. You believe that that's not the sum total of how we should be doing analytics. Can you tell me what the problem is with going into each one of those separate systems and looking at that one overview screen that they have? Why is that not a good thing?
Now, I think we should probably look back at how our customers, on the marketing side, how do they proceed through the customer journey? It's not just one touch point. They may see you on a podcast. They may see you on social media. They may come to your website or not even. They may interact with you on some other modality. But just a glimpse of one shot. Most platforms, including Google Analytics, offer you a snapshot, I believe, of what your customer is actually going through. You're probably not seeing a lot of what your customer is doing just when you look at a single snapshot of what that tool offers. So I think it as marketers, it's important for us to realize that the customer journey is comprised of thousands of interactions with a brand. And how do you view them all together? How do you consolidate your view to understand your customers better? And I think that's when you have to have a holistic approach to looking at what's happening with your customers, how they are progressing through the journey, and then how they are moving from the different awareness phase to the final evangelist phase. How do you bring all that together? To keep track of that, you need to have a better picture of all those touch points and what the activity is in those throughout those touch points. And that's why I think you need to put all the data together to understand that better. Because without that, it's just a snapshot of where they're at a certain point, and you need to have a more holistic picture, right?
Sure. And would it not also be true then that because there are so many different SaaS tools that are being used, and not just by, let's say, the marketer, but their colleagues over in sales or over in customer service, there are whole different areas of our organization that are touching the client. So what you're saying is, yeah, that information matters too, but it is better when it's brought together and that we can look at it the way that a customer would see things.
Exactly, and it's what's also important is to understand what is important for your customer, right? Like you don't know because the customer journey, as it progresses through the journey from marketing to sales to customer success, they are elaborating and building a relationship with you. They are building a deeper. You have an opportunity to build a deeper understanding with that customer through all these touch points. So how do you develop that deeper understanding without tracking that journey across all these phases, right? And that's where you need to, focus on if you really want to understand and get better at knowing your customer and building that relationship.
Do you think that there are insights that consolidating this data can have for us that rolls up many, many customers? So where we start to see overall trends, where we start to see what the changes that we make in one particular channel or at one particular stage of the journey will make for an overall success.
Definitely, because I think, I can give you a lot of examples, but one of the things that we were looking at recently is, we bring in a certain kind of customers, a certain kind of agencies. Let's talk about just agencies, right? We can bring in a certain kind of agencies, and is the agency we have different kinds of agencies, the smaller agencies and the bigger agencies. Now, we do a good job of converting them to customers because they come to our product, they buy our product, and they love the product, and they are customers. But during the conversion process, a lot of them convert without talking to our sales team. Some of them talk to our sales team. So, is there a difference between the two types of customers and their needs when it comes to the product itself? So, if you don't look at what's happening on the sales side and look at some of the activities on the sales side, you don't know how to if there is a difference between the customers that are self-serving and versus which are who are going on the sales side, right? So that's a small example of how you can actually even build a product or or change your product roadmap based on the customer, what the customer is telling you through various phases of the journey. So that's just a small example to say, yeah, you need to actually go and look at the data and say, what is the data telling you? Are you seeing that the clients on your sales who are talking to your sales team, are they asking for product comments? Are they asking for more information on your product? Do they need more hand holding? Uh, could some of the hand holding have been done on the marketing side before they came into the product? Could your content have resolved some of that hand holding? There's a lot of gold there, and I think you really need to dig into the data and dig into the information to be able to really fine tune your sales and marketing machine, so to speak,
Yeah.
and your product too, right?
Yeah.
Definitely your product.
Flaws in your process. I mean, it goes on, right? And I like how you said, for example, in that one where we are looking at the self-serve versus the, sales concierge deal, that like that provides a contrast, right? And there's nothing better than that in analytics for us
Yeah.
to understand there's a causal relationship. Oh, we didn't serve them there and they didn't buy that higher module. But when we
Yeah.
spoke with them, they did. Okay, so clearly, you know, the only people who buy it are the people who understand it. Now, how do we get them to better understand it? Maybe we can figure out a way to do that with self-serve.
Yeah. How do you showcase the value better on your self-serve before they buy the product, right? Because at the end of it, what you do on the sales side is define the value and prove that and showcase the value and highlight the value. And if you can, there's an opportunity probably there on the marketing side to done some of that work to make it maybe even easier for the sales team to be able to say reiterate the value and then confirm the value for the customer. So maybe there was something that was missing, which led the customer to say, okay, I don't see the value here. I need to dive deeper and talk to someone to understand the value better. But there's an opportunity on both sides to improve our positioning and positioning and the product for illustrating the value better.
Yeah. Yeah. When someone is trying to maybe improve how they're doing their analytics, let's say they're just at the stage where they log into a tool once a month, maybe they download to a spreadsheet the results from that one tool, and they're looking at a second tool, and they're trying to figure out, okay, I can download that one too, and I've got now these two separate spreadsheets, and I'm looking across and I see that this data could somehow help me. What do you say to people like that think that maybe just looking at the spreadsheets is going to do it for them? Like, what are the shortcomings of trying to do this on your own without having some kind of automated tool to help you?
So one of the things when you're working with one of the problems that we often see when one is working strictly with spreadsheets is the accuracy, because it's prone to human error. The data is only as good as you're putting in it, and when you're dealing with volumes of data, you are likely to miss a one here, a zero there, and that can make a big difference to
Mm-hmm.
what the insight that you gain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, spreadsheets, as much as all of us want to get away from them, we cannot totally do away with spreadsheets. They have their value too. Obviously, I've heard, I don't know if you have heard, Glenn, but any SaaS product is actually a replacement for a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah. Right.
So at least every B2B product is at some point we are trying to be replacements for a spreadsheet. So it definitely has its value. But I think what it does not do that well is imagine you're an agency or you're trying to convey a complex data. You're trying to convey and communicate it to someone else in a very in a consistent but easy and intuitive manner. That's difficult to do in a spreadsheet when you present someone with the spreadsheet and say, "This is the data. There it is." That's difficult.
Yep.
It's the visualization part is missing. Apart from the accuracy, the visualization, the ability to explain and communicate, because at the end of it, what you're trying to do is communicate a certain idea or an insight to someone else. And just having that spreadsheet there, and just a mass of numbers, it probably doesn't do it. And you may have to do a lot of work to get it to a stage where you can get a pie chart out of it, a pivot table with fancy stuff. So I think it leaves, it just makes your job of communicating the data that much harder if you're solely relying on spreadsheets. It's not efficient when you have got the tools. We can actually communicate the data much better in a much more intuitive manner, and in a way that's professional yet simple enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there are people who may go beyond spreadsheets and who, let's say, have a cloud database. And, recently Google Analytics started to offer for free the ability to export data to Google Cloud, which is a service that if you have enough volume, you will pay for, but, they will export for free every day the information that represents your web traffic from that day. So just to point out, your software does that same thing where it is updating every night. And that's a huge step above a spreadsheet. However, there are some things that I'm sure you would want to say to people who think that that's the route to go, where they can simply use a free-ish type of service like that to take raw data and drop it into tables. And, you would point out some things that may fall short of giving them a full-blown dashboard or a report. So what would you say to that?
Yes. First off, let me start by saying, is anything that you get from Google really free? I don't think that's debatable, right? It's free or not. That's an open question because you're either paying for it in terms of privacy, data privacy, or you're some sort of work or massaging that you have to do to the data. I mean, a simple example of this is the recent GA4 implementation. I think it's you can actually see a lot of people struggling with GA4 because of the fact that it's been turned on its head. In many ways, there's a lot more flexibility and there's a lot more power, but it's not intuitive enough. So I think that's, if you're looking for, and there's always a compromise. There's always a balance to be had between, speed, time to value, and cost.
Yep.
So which part of it are you? What is more important to you at a certain point of time? Is it the time to value, or is it the extreme customization? Right? What is more important to you at any point of time? That's an evaluation your business or any business has to make. What we have found is, if it is not, for most businesses, time to value is increasingly important. They need to get to that value point sooner than later. So yes, you can club together different free tools, and you can get data to be presented in a certain way, the way you like it to be presented. but it takes time and effort.
Right.
And there's a cost attached to that. There's an real opportunity cost attached to that.
That's true.
So if you want a solution that gets you to time to value sooner, it comes down to choices like ours, right?
Yeah. No, I think you've answered that. I think on balance, there will be these edge cases of a company whose reporting needs are far outside of what a standard funnel reporting looks like. But for the majority of them that's in the middle of that big bell, in the bell curve, they should be able to use a few, straightforward and common to all reports that show what their activity is doing. And I think where people struggle on the time to value and the cost component is that all of these MarTech tools that came along, I don't know how many we're at right now, but they come up with the landscape every year, and it's thousands and thousands, that people were so used to seeing that each one of those tools would be the thing that it hurts their head when someone like you comes along and says, okay, but there's actually now a different category of those same tools, but its main job is to look at the other tools and to assemble the data from them, right? That it gets meta.
Yeah, it does. And we all know that there's thousands of tools out there, right? It's like the market landscape itself is exploding. And, stack utilization, it's a huge issue. You build this huge, complex stack. Are you getting your money's worth? Probably not.
Tough question.
How much of the features are you using of a certain technology that you buy? So say you have Salesforce or HubSpot. How much of the technology are you really using? Your capabilities as an organization is a combination of technology, processes, talent. And how does all that come together to use a tool? So there's a company organizational maturity that plays into all that. So it is meta. It's a huge question about whether we're drowning in all these tools. But there's also this evolution, right? As something novel comes into the market and as you define best practices of that process or that function, you get into more complexity. And then as you get into more complexity, you have a need to dive into each one of those silos, and you can actually create a niche in those areas. And that's how MarTech is. And I think that's how marketing has evolved. And almost everything that we do in business has evolved. You are actually, as best practices become known, it gets more complex. You have more complex processes, and then there's a need to dive into and make a specialization of those niches which make up the whole, right? And that's what we are seeing in MarTech itself.
You'll get no argument out of me, and I hope everybody listened to what you just said, because it's really important. What I heard you say, in spite of the fact that you are, working for a vendor who says, here is an analytics tool, I heard you clearly say, and I think this is right, that even a good tool, it's going to show you some uniform data. But really, if you look at that information as more than just, well, is our website working? Like if you actually start to look at the patterns, that you should be able to step beyond those initial reports and ask better questions that truly help move your business ahead to come up with better ways to deliver and measure what you're doing with your customer.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's what I meant when I said when you're diving into complexities of a niche, you're looking for more data within that complex structure that you've now created from all the best practices that have happened because of the evolution of that niche itself, right? So, and there's a need to look into those siloed data points, data structures to say, okay, how do we make sense of it from the broader context?
Right.
And how do you connect it back to the broader context?
Right. But I think you'd agree that there's only one direction which you can get to those niche areas, and it is through the broader context. You'll never have those questions pop into your mind until you get past the standard, how is this working, or what cause leads to what effect. You have to start there. But as you say, your inquiry will, if it's working, will continue and spin out well beyond that.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I have found is how much data is enough. I've found the answer to that is it's never enough. You're always going to say, what about that? Oh, churn numbers. Okay, let me dive deeper into the churn. What kind of segment churns? And when did we get that segment or that cohort into our pipeline? So you're always asking for more data and for more insights from data, almost to the point of, over analysis, right?
You're never done doing better. Yeah, no, you can always do better. Exactly. You can always do better. I'd like to pick your brain on some of the things that can happen after we've got that information and where we take it. But before we do that, we're going to take a really short break. Do you have a lot of company data in reach, but struggle to get useful business insights out of it? Do you open up your Google Analytics, but find you're at a loss on how to get it reporting the way you want? Do you wonder what new marketing strategies you could leverage if you could just unlock what's in your data? If you said yes, then you sound just like other clients did when they started working with me. Many B2B companies who I've done project work with have been helped by modernizing their analytics. Should you be ready to begin a project, let's talk about what you would like your analytics to do for you. Please reach out today via the podcast feedback channels or connect with me, Hey Glenn S, 2 N's on Glenn, on either Twitter or Instagram, or on LinkedIn. Okay, let's get back to the show. Okay, Jacob, let's say we're the person who gets to sit in front of these lovely analytics tools and we see that information. We're probably not able immediately to have that translated into action, let's say, changing a budget or activating some spend or using insights to, develop new products or services. There's a bit of a gulf there, and what has to go across that gulf is someone presenting the information that came out of the tool to a decision maker. And, this is not a fait accompli. Can you tell me what you suggest or what you like or what you have seen that works in terms of the person who is taking that information and turning it into actionable insights and decisions?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest drivers for decisions is alignment on the goal, on the business goal, on the objective that you're trying to drive. If there's an alignment, whether you're an agency who's trying to align on a client or with a client and trying to move a certain decision in a certain way based on the data, or you're a marketing executive talking to a CEO, the objective has to be clarified. You need clarity on the objectives, and you need to make sure there's alignment on the objectives. Because once you have that, then you can use the data, and then and you can forge a narrative around the data. Obviously, you need to have strong cause to derive those insights from the data. But once you have alignment on the objective and both have decided, yes, this is where we want to go, then it's much easier to get to a decision point one way or the other based on the data and based on the narrative. So after that, it's just a matter of using the data to forge a narrative and say, this is what I see. These are the trends. This is where I believe it is going to go. And this is why we need to decide in so and so. We need to make a decision on so and so, right? So it's about aligning it. The alignment has to start at the objective level in order to be able to, get someone to a decision on a certain point. based on data.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that's been uniform for pretty much any job function, not just marketing, right? If you're trying to drive a decision, you need alignment on the objective first, and then you need to move towards a common consensus on what is the best way to arrive at that objective.
Yeah. I'll just underline one quick thing you said in there about how you need to be open about how the data was collected. So, for example, if you're taking some information that you're interpreting in a way, you want to say, well, here's the number of visits that I'm using to base my interpretation on. Then you can have a good discussion with that person on whether or not that's a large enough sample size to make that kind of interpretation or not.
Exactly. Yep. That makes sense. And I think sample size is something that at least I take for granted because I'm dealing usually in huge volumes of data. So, you take it for granted, but that's an important point there, Glenn, because I think a lot of teams, they go awry in the way they draw insights because the sample size is not large enough or wasn't relevant enough to make a certain decision. So sample size is definitely something that plays a huge part in the insights you can drive from the data.
Do you also encourage people, if they know certain numbers, that they will, let's say, log into a tool like yours to see that they can structure an experiment if, let's say, the decision maker isn't completely sure about the direction to go, that they can set up something where we're testing what people's reaction are. And, you basically say to them, well, in a week's time or in a month's time, we'll come back into this tool and we will look and see what numbers came out of that. And we'll let that tell us whether or not you were right or I was right.
Yeah, I think there is. I think marketers would call something like that conversion rate optimization, right? CRO.
Yep.
So basically, what you're trying to do is you have a hypothesis, and you say, okay, this is the hypothesis we have right now, and what we are going to do is we're going to test out that hypothesis. This is the amount of time we need to collect meaningful sample data to validate or invalidate that hypothesis. And then we come back and we say, okay, whether it worked or not, whether our tests worked or not. Yes, certainly. So that's anything that you can get data, any software that you can get. If you're running an A/B test out of campaigns on Facebook, Twitter, and you want to test out different campaigns, as long as you have the data will tell you whether your hypothesis was right or wrong, right? So you can come back to that and say, okay, we did a test, we did a small test, this is the timeline we had decided to test out that hypothesis, and we've got it. And this is the result. It's either right or it's wrong, right? Our hypothesis was right or wrong.
Yes. And when it's pulled into a system, I have to note that there's even a part to it that allows the decision maker to say, I'm going to trust this more than I would something in a spreadsheet. You mentioned the human error before, but even if it's not an error, but there's, we have to run around to 5-6 different places to get this information. Yeah. I think that's enough friction for someone to say it's not worth running the experiment.
Yeah, I think that's true, especially if the decision maker that you're talking to or you are consulting and trying to arrive at a consensus or a decision with, if that decision maker is not comfortable with running to 10 different dashboards. Right. You and I may be comfortable with doing things like that because we do that often enough, right? But I think when you're talking to an audience or you're talking to someone, like in our cases, you're talking to a business owner, a marketing agencies, who's talking to a business owner who just wants to see has your agency been able to drive results for my business? They don't want to look at 10 different dashboards. They want to see an easy way to assess and make a decision and say, Yeah, I think you're doing good. And what we find, especially uh, since we've been talking to a lot, we have about 6,000 plus marketing agencies who are our customers. So as we speak to them, what we find, we actually did an interesting benchmark survey, and we found that the client retention of the marketing agencies that we surveyed was super high, up to 80%. And we were like, oh, wow, that's the number that we were not expecting. So what we found time and again is that the agencies actually said how you communicate your results are more important than the results themselves. And that's a huge insight, right? There you are building trust, you're building credibility through data, you're through your data storytelling, you're proving results. There's a the human relationship beyond the data. There's that human relationship that you're building with your customer and with the client, and you're building credibility across time, and you're sort of reinforcing that credibility with the data that you have, and with the consolidated data, the aggregated data that you're going to pull and present in a frictionless way without having to log into 10 different softwares. I think how you communicate is so important than the results itself. That's a big takeaway from that survey that we did.
Yeah, and it's felt very acutely in an agency where you have many clients. You were talking about how the data is collected, without being touched by human hands. That's thanks to APIs. And while it's true that an agency can bring together through APIs a data feed from this source and that source, the problems really multiply when, let's say, one source that is used by many clients, especially, changes the way that their records appear. So their record format changes. All of a sudden, all the reports that agency had been making break across multiple clients. So you've got to fix them one by one. To use a service where someone else is worried about when that API changes, it certainly makes it easier for them to keep that credibility, because I assure you, a broken report doesn't help your credibility.
Yeah.
But on the other side, it just keeps the lines clear, because the people who are in charge of making good performance happen, it's not their core business to worry about the measurement of that performance. And you don't want that. Like if I'm flying in an airplane, I don't want to see the captain serving the beverages.
Right.
Keep them up in the cockpit. Thank you. I like them, busy on what they're doing, and let other people do the other jobs. So this is just one of those same specialization things where we need to admit, especially in matters, when it gets scaled up, that you need experts, each focused on their own task.
Exactly. And I don't know, I remember tweeting something last week, I think, Glenn, and I think you retweeted or you liked it. It was about Scott Brinker's article about Build versus Buy. And I think there's an interesting Conway's law that he had mentioned there, right? Any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. So if you go forward and try to build something together, your product will be only as good as your team's communication structure.
Oh man, boy, right? Does that, yeah. And what hit home when you were talking to me about that is anybody who's gone through the sales forecasting exercise. So marketing and sales get together, and very rarely has it been fun. It usually is a grind. And like you said, Conway's law, they each have to be looking at their own things, but we need to look at ways where we can have the data just handled by itself and not get right in the middle of it with them, because there's personalities and different objectives and cross purposes happening. And there's enough to do. We don't need that on top of it.
Yeah, I think your you're talking about the misalignments
Yeah.
that often happen between marketing and sales, right? So that itself, that's a whole new podcast, I think. Probably a whole series of podcasts for you there. But yeah, I enjoy talking about sales marketing alignment because in the current business that I'm in, sales and marketing both report to me. So it's in my interest to actually align, make sure they're aligned. And I've always looked at marketing as a revenue center, and I always aligned marketing with sales objectives. That's why we've got a great way to align sales and marketing at our business. But yeah, it's if you can have data that's agnostic and you can be focused on the objective throughout your conversations, it just becomes easier to arrive at an objective because you are now focused on the objective and not by your piece of the objective or your part of the objective, right?
Yeah.
And you can tune and you can always improve your part of the objective, your function, obviously. But then the whole is the bigger objective, the broader goal is more important than your silo and how you get how you achieve results in your silo, right?
Yeah. And if I look at some of the individual KPIs that we get at there, for example, if we take email open rates and email engagements, right, click-throughs, when we look at how an organization sends emails out, they may have one tool that both sends out their marketing nurturing emails, but it may also send out some of their transactional emails, and it may also send out some maybe support ticket emails. So we've got to be careful that that tool, that we use that information, like that metric, along with other things to inform us. We can't take a blended number like what it was across those different types of emails and point a finger at another department and say, you're doing badly. There's more nuance to it than that.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's, apart from what you mentioned, transactional emails, communication emails, promotional emails, there's also onboarding emails in SaaS. That is a big part of that whole customer journey. And how do those emails play with each other? Because sometimes, when someone is in trial, you may also want to send them a promotional email when they're already in a trial. So the decision, does the promotional email play a part in the decision, since they're already in a trial and they've already sort of made their mind to buy the product, but then are you devaluing them at the wrong time when they're already in the product? So there's a lot to unpack there. But at the end of it, you need to know that you're working towards the same goal, right? So at the end of it, if you're meeting your overall objectives, and these are all the emails that can impact that objective, it makes sense to make sure that it's all aligned and we're working towards the same objective, right? So I think it's meeting those objectives and knowing your part, what your channel is contributing to the objective is important, but there may be overlap. Also understanding that there may be overlaps. For example, when we calculate our page spend and we say, okay, this is our CPL, it's never just paid, right? It's always another touch point somewhere else too. So, and we sort of ignored that part because it's convenient to simplify it, but you always need to acknowledge that there is some part of it that's coming from other activity that probably had some overlap, and there was another touch point that influenced your KPI, right?
And our reflex is to say, oh, but I just want the KPI, and did the KPI go up? But you've just pointed out many examples of you have to drill a bit deeper than that. You may have to filter, or you may have to export it and look at each one of the records. There's more to it. Don't be so driven by a single number, because you want to, as we said, get to better questions. And sometimes that better question is behind a breakdown of a number. You got to break it out to see what you're doing.
Agreed.
The question that really one cannot leave a podcast without asking in 2023 is, what do you think the impact of AI is going to be in terms of being able to look at these pieces of data and notice trends and potentially point out insights?
Yeah, I think it's an open question. What I'm thinking is, how's the landscape going to shift, especially with AI? So we know we are talking about AI right now. When we talk about AI, it's the language models that we talk about, but we are working towards a little more advanced AI that's going to come soon, which is probably going to make pulling data and driving insights easier for a lot of non-programmers too. So I think it would be interesting to see how the landscape changes. Like, are we going to see an expansion of commercial data tools, or are we going to see a shrinking of the commercial market, commercial data tools? Because everyone is now going to be empowered to create their own tool and to build small apps that can do what they want to do. So there's that part to it, because AI can help you build also.
Yeah.
But obviously there's that insights part that you're talking about, where AI can sort of help you look at past trends, and evaluate future trends based on the data that it has at its disposal. So I'm not going to say I'm an AI expert and I know where it's going. Far from that, but it's going to be interesting for sure to see how this all plays out, right?
Yeah, watch this space. Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Jacob, if people want to find out more about agency analytics, about you, where would they go?
I think the best place to go to is agencyanalytics.com. That's where we serve over 6,500 agencies, 6,000 to 6,500 agencies from. And we are a software built just for marketing agencies. Agency analytics, we help you save time, improve client retention, and allow you to communicate better with your customer and improve client satisfaction. So you need to know more about me. You can also find me at jacobv.com, which is my website. I must say that it's been a while since I devoted some time to blogging, but it's there. And it's like it is with a lot of things these days. There's such a lot of places, platforms where you can engage. So it's, the intent is there to keep the blog going, but as of now, it's there.
Right. Yeah. No, I follow you. And thank you for giving those places. They'll be in the show notes. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Glenn. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for having me here.
No problem. I know that people have been able to think in new ways about their funnel as a result of what you said, and hopefully make it even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.